everyone, I'm Whitney and I post a new sewing tutorial every single Wednesday here on my channel, but today it is not Wednesday, and that's because I don't have a tutorial. Instead, I have a Sew Your Stash update. If you don't know what Sew Your Stash is, it is a challenge I started a little over 2 years ago to try to focus on using fabrics from my stash rather than going out and purchasing fun new fabrics for every project that I want to make. I need to use some of those fabrics that I've been hanging on to entirely too long, and so this video today is my update for winter. So I'm going to go over a lot of the projects that I made this winter using fabrics from my stash, and I actually did a pretty good job, at least I feel like, especially since we moved right in the middle of winter. So there was a couple of weeks where I couldn't do any sewing, and then in addition to that, I don't know if anyone noticed yet, but I moved again. So we moved to a new house, and then I'm supposed to have my own sewing room in the new house. But it didn't work out because that room shares a wall with my kids' bedroom, and I couldn't sew anytime they were in bed, which is when I do 90% of my work, because the sound of the sewing and everything was bothering them and keeping them awake. So a couple weeks ago, I decided I had to figure out a solution so I could get back to doing projects that I wanted to make and being able to do enough sewing to keep me happy. So I've actually stolen a corner of our master bedroom, and that's where I'm at now. That's why you can't really tell too much, but that's why my sewing machine and my serger are now on the same table. I'll give more of a tour of the space once I get it set up better. I'm still kind of working on it, but that's what's going on. And now that I'm in the new room, I should be able to do even more sewing than before. But all that aside, let's get into the projects that I made this winter time from stash. So first up is this gigantic drawstring bag, and there are Lincoln logs in here. So several years ago, Jeremiah and I purchased Lincoln logs at Goodwill for under $3, a huge set of them. And we had just held on to them because we love the classic toys, and we knew we wanted to have them when our kids were old enough to use them. Well, they're old enough now, so we gifted them for Christmas this year to the kids to share, and I made this huge bag for them to go in because previously they had just been in a cardboard box, and we wanted something that the kids could open and close easily. So I made a gigantic bag with boxed corners, and it's this cute little farm kind of print on the outside that a viewer actually sent to me within the last year, so it's not really stash fabric, but the ribbon as well as the lining, which is this awesome red gingham, is from stash. It's been in my stash a very long time, so I was able to use almost all of the red gingham for this bag, and I absolutely love how it turned out. It is definitely the biggest drawstring bag I've ever made. I also made another drawstring bag, and this one I did share a tutorial for. It is this cute Mickey and Minnie bag with the contrast top, and all of this was stashed fabrics. And I made this to hold 2 sets of Duplo blocks for my kids since they loved the Lincoln log bag, and it is just barely big enough. It just barely closes at the top. So in hindsight, if I made something like this again, I would probably add about an inch at least to the top, just because everything just barely fits in there. But it was definitely a big win on the stash because I've had this material for several years. A website sent it to me to use in a video, and I absolutely love the fabric. This is, I think, the second time I've used it, and I really held on to it for a while because it was one of those I love it so much I don't want to cut into it kinds of things, but it's time. I've had it for several years. It needs to get used and enjoyed, and my youngest daughter especially is really into Mickey and Minnie right now, so I'm trying to find little projects I can make for her that use Mickey and Minnie fabric for my stash, because I want her to enjoy the things while she still loves them. Yeah, I enjoy the print, but I want her to, get to see fabrics that she loves as well. So really trying to use those Mickey and Minnie fabrics right now. Then after that, I made a little storage bin for my daughter's kitchen stuff, and I don't have it here to hold up because it's in her kitchen at the moment, but I'll insert some footage. And this was another bit of stash fabric, and I just used some stash foam as well, and it was what determined the size of the bin was the size of the foam that I had available. So that was really great because it was kind of a cut-off scrap, and I was able to use every bit of it and make a little bin that fits her dishes perfectly. And so she's really enjoying using that. So those were the things that I made in December. And then one of the last things I made in December was a fabric bunting for my daughter's birthday. My oldest daughter, myself, and my husband all have a birthday on the same day. So of course my daughter wins and she gets to pick the party theme, even though it's for all three of us. And so she chose Batman this year. So I had this scrap of Batman fabric right here, and it was by the width of the fabric, but at one end it was like 6 inches and the other end it was like 9 inches because it was cut horribly. And so I redesigned my bunting pattern, you can see it back there too, to perfectly fit the scrap of fabric that I had, so I could make the absolute most use of the, I used the shortest measurement as my guide, and then I used a couple other fabrics from Stash, and I made this cute little bunting to hang up at the party. And she was so excited about it because I didn't tell her I was making it beforehand, and when she saw it she was so thrilled. And I was able to use that scrap of fabric that I could not figure out what to use it for because it was such a small amount for how large the graphics are. But yeah, so we're gonna hang on to this, of course, because yeah, it was perfect for the party, but we can hang it up again some other time, and it's fun. It's reusable, and it cost me nothing because everything, including the bias tape, was from Stash. And I think I'm gonna make another one for my younger daughter. Her birthday is coming up in the end of April. So I'm probably going to use some of my Mickey and Minnie fabrics and make her a bunting as well, because she's having a Minnie Mouse party and she is very, very, very excited about it. I also made a few more cloth pads for myself. I have a video tutorial showing how I make cloth menstrual pads. I made 6 new ones because I just felt like I needed a few more in my stash, and I used some flannel as well as just some cotton for my stash. None of them match because I just grab whatever I have on hand that's the right size. And I don't care if the front and back match because they're serving their purpose. And yeah, I'm able to use up some fabrics that I don't really think are pretty or cute. And it doesn't matter because no one else sees them but me. But yeah, so I have that tutorial. And by the way, every video or tutorial that I mention or have available, I will have it all linked in a playlist, and I will have that down in the video description, as well as the information icon in the upper corner of the screen here, so that every tutorial I mention, if you're interested in it, you haven't seen it yet, you can find it there and learn how to make these projects. I definitely recommend the cloth pad tutorial. There is 2 free patterns that go along with it. I charge for some of my patterns, but these are free because you know what? You can't help. When you need pads, you need pads. So, you know, that's for free. So definitely check that out. I also made a few more zipper bags. One in particular was what I called the like cheater style serger bag or something like that. It's super quick to make. It is a lined bag, but as opposed to most typical lined bags where the seam allowances are hidden on the inside, this one is lined and then the seam allowances are serged, and they do show on the inside, but to be quite honest, my kids don't care. I just needed some quick bags to whip up to hold some of their things. We bought a huge bag of magnetic letters at the thrift store, and I needed a big bag to put them in, so I whipped up a bag for that. I also whipped up a couple other ones, and so they're just so fast and easy to make. They serve a great purpose around the house, especially with toys and toy storage. And yeah, they just use some cute fabrics from my stash that my kids get to enjoy. You can kind of see a trend with a lot of these that I make a lot of things now for my kids to enjoy, because I like to make things that are practical, that serve a use, because, you know, I can't really afford the time or the money to make things that don't have a purpose or will not be used in some way. I feel like that's kind of a waste because even though I can teach other people how to make the item by doing that, I just have a limited sewing time and, you know, limited resources. So I try to make things that we can actually put to proper use and function around our home. And that's what really motivates a lot of the projects that I do. And speaking of things that have a great function, I made some fidget mats. These were not for my kids, but they are for some specific kids. This was requested by a viewer friend of mine, and she knows of some particular students who needed some fidget mats to keep their hands busy during school. And so I made a couple of mats for them. I mailed them to my friend, and so she's going to distribute them to the students who need them. And this used a remnant from my stash of decorator fabric that I had picked up. I loved it at the time, but the longer I had it, the less I loved it. So I was able to use it for this project, and I thought it worked out perfectly because it was a textured fabric, so I thought that was a nice added element to the fidget mats, adding that extra texture. And then for the back, I was able to use some cotton fabrics that was like the very last bit of those fabrics that I had, so it used those up. And then I also used some different little notions and things as well. So a lot of fun elements went into these projects, and it felt great to make them because I knew they were going to be put to really good use by some kids who really needed them. Then I made an entire quilt top, and this one was a really quick one to put together, but it was such a long time in the making. I actually designed the quilt over a year and a half ago. I am so slow at getting to things sometimes. And I had even cut the fabrics out well over a year ago, but I didn't sew it together because I knew I wanted to film the process, but in our old house, the area I had for filming was so small that it was really hard to film bigger projects. And this is one that from the start is a big project. It's not one of those where you can show how to do the smaller parts and then, you know, not show once it gets so big. But this one from the start is a big project. And so as soon as we got moved into this house and I had more floor space to film in, I whipped that quilt top together. It felt so good to get it sewn together. I'm not actually even sure where that quilt top is now. I need to finish it. Who knows how long it will be before I get it finished, but it is somewhere in this house and I don't know where. But once I get it done, I will probably be gifting it to someone else. I'm not big on Winnie the Pooh. We don't really need another, you know, crib or toddler size quilt right now. But it did feel good to at least get that top piece together because those cutout pieces have been hanging around my sewing room for no joke almost a year and a half, and that is ridiculous. So yeah, after that I tackled another part of my stash that has been around for a really long time, and that is vinyl. I've had a clear vinyl remnant. It was a remnant, but it's like over a yard, and I'm kind of afraid of sewing vinyl just because it's kind of fiddly and frustrating sometimes. And so I was like, you know what? I need to work with this vinyl because it's going to be around forever if I don't start using it. And I'm always going to be afraid of using it if I don't start using it. So I did start using it, and I made, here it is, some vinyl bags. So this was my test bag, and as you can see, it's a little bit different than the final bag. I used a wider bias tape. I think these measurements are a little different. I can't remember. But anyway, this is the test version of the bag. It turned out pretty cute. I used some leftovers from some sponsored videos that I did a year or so ago. 2 years, maybe, a year ago. So it was a video where I was sent all the fabrics to do the project, and I had leftovers that then got added to my stash. So I've been trying to use those fabrics on things like this. And as you can see, we're using this one right now for holding pom-poms. The other one that I made and actually showed in the tutorial is being used right now as well. My kids went on a sleepover last weekend, and I sent their toothbrush, toothpaste, some basic toiletry type things in their vinyl bag like this, and it worked out really well. It was a great bag for that, and actually I might end up making another one that's just a little bit bigger and using either oilcloth or laminated cotton for the backing fabric, and then it would be even more like wipe out or wipe clean type, you know what I mean? Like if something spilled in it, I could just like wipe it out with a wet rag. So yeah, I might do that. I don't know. I might do another tutorial for it since like the measurements and stuff would be different. So let me know if that's something you might be interested in seeing, of like a toiletries bag that's similar to this, and maybe I can make that happen. And by this point, I was pretty much on a zipper bag craze. So the next one I made was this double fold zipper bag. This one is so cool. I came up with this idea while I was sick, and surprisingly enough, it worked out perfectly, and I absolutely love it. So it uses 3 different fabrics. There's the outer, the inside, and then the lining. These have all been in my stash a very long time. I had bought 2 or 3 yards of the mermaid fabric several years ago at a discount fabric store that has long since gone out of business, and I love the fabric so much, and I loved it too much to use because I thought, well, it has to be like the perfect project to use it because I don't want to waste it, even though I have this huge amount of it, you know. I did make one bag using the fabric. So the first project I used this fabric on was supposed to have a PDF that accompanied it. And at the time I didn't really know how to make a PDF, and I wanted it to be amazing, and I was afraid my skills weren't up to it. So I just never made the video, and I really should. I have all the footage and everything, so I really need to do that. But I finally decided I need to start using more of that fabric because I like it and I want to use it. So I used it for this, and it turned out really cute. And I still have a lot of the mermaid fabric left, so hopefully you will see it again sometime in the future on more videos. And then after that, I made more zipper bags. So I made this curved top zipper bag based off of a bag I saw on Instagram, and while I was on Instagram I thought there was a bag with a curved top and a curved pocket. I was wrong. In the picture it was just a curved top bag and then another curved seam right here, and like the same fabric for both, but there was like some seam detailing, and I was like, oh, well, that's not what I thought the bag was, and I was disappointed that this bag in the picture was not the bag that I thought it was in my head. So for some reason that upset me more than it should have. So I decided to design the bag that I thought I had seen in the picture originally, and so that's where this idea came from. This was my test bag, and I used some leftover fabric from a dress I had made Peyton. Both fabrics are from that dress, and I was like, oh, this is really cute, but I knew it was a little bit like floppier than I wanted, and it didn't dawn on me until after I made the second bag of how to correct that. So here is the one I made for the video as well, floppy, you know, and after, like, as soon as I got almost all the way through sewing the bag, I was like, oh, I should have used fusible fleece instead of fusible interfacing. But it was too late for this project, and I have a whole bolt of fusible fleece. Like, there is no lack of, you know, fusible fleece in my stash. But since I hadn't used it in so long, I used to use it all the time, but since we've moved, it had gotten put away and it just wasn't in my line of sight. It wasn't in my thinking at the time. And so I just thought, oh, interfacing, I've been using interfacing for like everything, so that's what I'll use. And so I really wish I would have used the fusible fleece on it. I might end up making some more and using the fusible fleece just so I can like finally have a version of the bag that I'm really, really pleased with. But I do like these as well. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them being less structured. I just, what I had pictured in my head was more structured to begin with, but they're still really adorable, and they use some stash. This fabric in particular has been in my stash for years and years. I have it in this colorway as well as in a like pink, yellow, and orange colorway. And another one of those. I love it so much, I don't want to use it. But now it's so many years later, I'm kind of tired of seeing it in my stash and I want it to be used. So it's kind of in a weird spot that I'm at right now, is I'm tired of looking at some of these fabrics. So now I'm finally using them. But anyway, so we're past all the zipper bags now and on to some other fun things that you haven't heard anything about. And they are for some cosplays that I'm working on for this summer that I, fingers crossed, will get finished, because I was like gung-ho working on one of them. And the cosplay is Arietti from the Secret World of Arietti. And I found a sewing pattern that I was like, yes, this is the pattern that I want to use. And I made it to the fabric store within like 4 or 5 days of finding the pattern online. And during that time, online, the pattern went from where you could purchase it online, but I was going to buy it in the store because it was on sale at the store, to it suddenly being out of print and not available. So I had found the pattern before the change of the seasonal catalog, I guess. And so they changed the catalogs for the new season and the pattern is suddenly out of print and I can't get a hold of it. So I have lost all my oomph for this cosplay and I don't really know what I'm going to do. So, because I mean, I can just like make a dress from scratch, but I really like to start with patterns because, as I mentioned earlier, my time is limited. And if I can start from a pattern where I already know it's going to be like the right neckline shape and stuff, that really makes things a lot easier and takes out a lot of the guesswork. But yeah, anyway, so long story short, I've already made the bag for the cosplay and it is right here. I made this button from clay, and so in the movie, it's basically the borrowers. So this girl is like 3 or 4 inches tall, so everything is a huge scale to her. So like she has kind of like this sword, but it is a straight pin. But to her, it's the size of a sword. So I'm working on that as well. So here's the bag that goes against the back, and then here's the other side. So there's like some giant stitches on hers, and this is just some ribbon from my stash that is like a light brown that I went over just barely with Sharpie to tone it darker. This material right here is left from a duvet cover that I made a Princess Leia cosplay from a few years ago. And then inside is another very similarly colored material that is from the material I use as a pressing mat most of the time, and I just cut off part of it. And then I did have to buy the material for the strap, but I found the exact same color at Walmart for like $4 a yard, so very happy with that. My only downside on the bag is I wish I would have made the strap like 2 inches longer so that it hung a little bit looser on me. But other than that, I'm really happy with how the bag turned out. I just have to get the entire rest of the cosplay together. The other cosplay that I'm working on is kind of an interesting one. So there are the characters in Star Wars named Twi'leks or Twi'leks or something like that. And they're the people that have like the tail kind of things coming off their heads. I'm terrible at explaining this. The tail things are called like lekus or something. I don't know. I'm horrible at names. So anyway, they are supposed to be like the same color as your skin, or if you're like a green person, they would be green as well. Anyway, I needed to make some practice ones, so I grabbed some knit from my stash. There's rice on the end. That's why it's funny. Anyway, so here's my practice leku. Kind of looks weird. I made 2 practice ones, and I will insert a picture of how it looks on. But hopefully I can master the measurements and all that and make myself a leku. It will obviously not look super real because I'm using fabric instead of like a silicone to make it, but it's just for fun. There's a whole group of ladies who dress up as Twi'leks or Twi'leks or whatever, and you know, they dress up all together and go to a convention, and it's fun. And I thought, you know, why not join in? So that's something that I'm trying to get done for this summer, and if it works out, I will of course share it in a future video. But yeah, one more project to share. And this one is a pretty recent video, and it is my rainbow drawstring bag, and this uses the same fabric that I use for my pressing surface. I don't know why. But it's the inside and outside is that, and then these are several polka dot prints from my stash, and I absolutely love how this bag turned out. It is so beautiful. The only thing is I don't know what to use it for because of its light color. I don't want it to get dirty, and I want it to be like the perfect thing to use it for, and I don't know what that is right now. So for now, it's just hanging around looking pretty. But I love anything in color order, so this makes me absolutely happy. And yeah, I think that's most of the things that there's like a few other things I've made, but nothing major. Yeah, so I feel pretty accomplished for how much I've made from my stash. I still need to try to work more to use some of the patterns for my stash. That's one of my big goals, is to try to use patterns for my stash, and I don't think I used any during this time, so didn't quite make that goal. And then one of my other goals is to try to use fabrics that, like fabric types that I don't usually use. And I actually did pretty good at that because this time I used vinyl, and then I also used the knit from this, which this is just a practice thing, so it's not like a final project that it's getting used for, but I've had this knit in my stash since my senior year of college, so 10 years, and it hadn't been used yet, so I'm fine with using it for a practice project, even if it you know, just ends up getting thrown away or whatever in the end. But yeah, so I did pretty good on that aspect of using different kinds of fabrics than I usually do. And I, of course, did purchase a few fabrics as well along the way. I showed you the one from Walmart that I purchased. I also had to pick up some material for a cosplay. I also picked up some blender type fabrics, as I call them, so like tone on tones or like small polka dot and things like that, to mix with other larger prints in my stash, because I am running out of those like smaller prints that are good for linings or for putting next to a bigger print. So yeah, don't think this challenge is where you're not allowed to buy any fabric ever at all again. It's just trying to use those fabrics that have been hanging around and those notions and supplies that have been hanging around for a long time, to where we're so used to looking at them that we don't even really see them anymore. Yeah, so that's been my update, and I want to hear how you all are doing with the challenge. And as always, until next time, happy sewing.